Good morning, everyone, to the Walk of Love ministry this morning, where it is a walk with God each and every day. I am just feel so honored to have our special guest this morning is Councilperson Deanna McLaughlin. I'm so thankful you're here. It's a rainy day this morning, but it's a start of the week. Miss Pastor Stephanie has already prayed with us this morning, and so we're going to get right into our conversation and learn a little bit more about Councilperson Deanna. You know, we go way back. Been known each other for a while, and we were sitting there talking about Papa Joe
Papa Joe
and the hot dogs.
and chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, but man, he loved it when you would come around. But y'all just had this connection from the very beginning.
It's like we knew each other forever.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of draw to him.
Well, before we get started, because you know the question, and then we're at the last Monday in the month of March, which is Women's History Month. And the topic this month has been people have made a difference in your life and why. But before we get into that, just share something about you that maybe people that people I know you, but those that have met you, going to meet you for the first time today, a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I grew up in Washington State. I met my husband at the Portland Rose Festival Air Show, and we were going to be pen pals. He was in the Army. And after 5 months of talking on the phone, because he wasn't a writer, he came back out on leave and asked me to marry him, and we'll be married 33 years this year.
Wow. So
Yeah.
instead of writing, he just kind of got you.
Yeah, he just said, "This is we're for each other," and that's
Wow.
yeah. I know people are that's crazy, but when you know, you know, and
You know.
people come to your life because God wants them in your life, and
Yeah.
it all lined up, and here we are.
Wow. That's kind of neat. I mean, were you kind of shocked when that happened? Are you ready for it? Did you expect
No,
it?
I mean it all felt right. It
Yeah.
all felt right, and I know a lot of people are wondering, "Wow, you look so young. Have you been married 33 years?" Thank you for saying that. You know me, have to.
You have to. You have
Be a
to.
little funny.
You've got to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So tell us, I asked you earlier about when you ran for council and why you did that, because I think that's an important piece of why you decided I want to go out and just do something I didn't know anything about. And you told a story about a gentleman that kind of told you were going to do it.
Right. So when we got stationed at Fort Campbell, we moved into a well-established neighborhood. A lot of Korean War and Vietnam era veterans, and we were the young people in the neighborhood. And Chuck and Jeanette Dunchesky kind of took us under their wing and took care of us. And our city councilman at the time was running for the state legislature, and he came over, Mr. Dunchesky came over and said, "You know, Deanna, our city council seat's open and you're going to run for it." I'm like, Mr. Dunchesky, I don't know anything about running for politics. I've worked on campaigns as a volunteer, but I don't know anything. He said, you love people and you know how to take care of people, and that's what we need, and you're running. So you never told Mr. Dunchesky no.
So it just began. That started your
Yes.
political career.
It did, yes.
And so did you talk to your husband about it? How did he feel about it?
So he was deployed, obviously, for training, and he goes, "Well, do whatever you need to do." And I said, "Well, Mr. Dunchesky isn't going to let you say no either."
And then you started planning.
And my unofficial campaign manager was my daughter Caitlin, who was 6 at the time.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so sweet.
So she went with me everywhere, walking door to door.
Oh.
You know, she would fold flyers. Her and her friends would go on their bikes and put flyers on people's paper boxes. And so, yeah, it was a very, very grassroots effort. So,
You know, we were talking before we started. This today was supposed to be my mentor, Kay Martin, that was going to come on, and she had called, she had broke her leg, and so I was praying and asking the Lord, I said, "Father, who's next? Who do you want next to be on the podcast?" And you walked through the door at Bella's Closet to give a donation. And I heard the Lord say, ask, and I did, and you were so gracious. And I want to say thank you again for being here this morning and taking the time. And when I told you what the topic was, you knew right away who you were going to talk about. Can you share who that person is in your life and why?
Sure, it's a combination between my mother and her mother, my grandmother, both very strong women, both women whose path in life changed, but they didn't let it get them down. They pushed on and did what they needed to do for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that set me up for success as a military wife. You know, my husband was gone every other year. I was raising Caitlin, and I don't know if I could have done it without having them as an example and remembering back to the adversity that I know they experienced.
So what is that? I want to, something funny, because that's what I keep hearing your grandmother said to you that you still remember to this day.
Oh, there's so many things, some are not appropriate to say.
No, we won't do that on this one, but something funny. Yeah.
Well, she would get really fired up. She was probably my first experience with politics. She would get fired up about things. She lived in Portland, Oregon, and there was, she called it a boondoggle. They were going to put a light rail in. And she complained and complained and complained about it. She'd go to City Hall and all this. Well, when it opened, I was at her house that weekend and she said, get dressed, put your shoes on. We're going somewhere. I said, where are we going? She goes, we're going to go ride in the boondoggle. And I said, well, what are you against that? She goes, well, I paid for it and we're going to ride it.
So y'all went and took a ride?
Yes, on the boondoggle. And she wasn't even 5 feet tall. She was the littlest lady, but she was so feisty. So feisty.
And tell us what your grandmother right now, has got Alzheimer's. And tell me
No, that's my mother.
your mother does.
Yes.
Okay.
My grandmother passed when I was 16
Okay.
from cancer.
Okay.
And just to kind of go back, she was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And during World War II, she had just graduated from college, Downer College in Milwaukee as a nurse, specialized in occupational therapy. And she signed up to be an Army nurse for the war. And she was stationed at Fort Vancouver, Washington. And that's how our family ended up on the West Coast. But my grandfather was in Africa during World War II, had to be sent home for surgery. And my grandma was his nurse, and it was love at first sight. And they got married.
Sweet.
Yeah, he was from Illinois, and so that's how we ended up in the West. And after the war, he ended up being a sandblaster on Bonneville Dam, and he got terminal lung cancer, and he passed when my mom was 16. And there's my grandma with 3 kids. She hadn't had a job since the war, and she just pulled up her bootstraps and she found a job that moved her family and took care of her family and did what she needed to financially to make sure that everybody was taken care of.
Wow.
So,
Wow. And then tell me about your mom.
so my mom, Joan, also a very strong woman. Her and my biological father were married, and then there was me, and then a year and 4 days later was my brother, and he wasn't faithful, and she found out, and she said, well, I'm don't need you. Got my kids. I'm gonna take care of them. And she worked 2 and 3 jobs to take care of us. And she did everything she could to make sporting events and special events. And then we'll go back to work. And one story that I just remember is she was really short on making her bills one month. And she went to DHS in our hometown and said, I just need food stamps just for 1 month, just to get us by. And she was very prideful. She was proud of everything she was doing. And they basically looked at her and said, well, you'd be better off going on welfare. And she said, thank you. We'll figure it out this month.
Wow.
Yeah. So just very strong women, did everything that they could. Very involved in community. My grandmother, she was on her church board, and I would go help set communion up with her. And I was raised in a Baptist church in my hometown, and my mom had made sure we were at a Awana club. And I wanted to sing in the choir for the Christmas show one year. I'm not a very good singer, but my mom, beautiful voice. And at the end of the first show, the pastor of choirs basically told my mom, Joan, maybe next year Deanna should be in the play.
Be an actor instead of a singer. Wow.
Yeah, that was hard, but she said it's fine.
Yeah, you did good.
Yeah.
You do go back
tried.
next year?
Well, I was still a member of the church, but no, I didn't want to be a donkey or a camel. It was better just to sit in the audience and watch the show. So.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about I know your mom and your grandmother, and I know their faith was important. What in your walk with the Lord, who is someone that is really, I know your mom and your grandma, but anybody else in your life that their walk with the Lord just really stood out to you?
I would probably say that my brother has been very inspirational. Um, we were raised in the same church. He went away to the Marine Corps, but he always found a place to worship along the way. And him and his family are on the board of their home church. He has the Boy Scouts in the church that he runs, and they mentor at a camp for children who normally can't afford camp. They go clean up the campsite, and they're very, very involved. And you know, people who do things because it's their calling and not for the attention, I respect more than anything. And him and his family don't look for pats on the back. They're doing what they need to do for people because they truly care.
It's got a servant heart,
Yes.
and that's what you have.
Thank
And you do. I mean, you look out for people, but you're always so passionate about it. What's coming up this Thursday that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we all know we had a devastating flood in February, and there's a zone case coming up in my ward that happens to be right in line with where houses that had never flooded before are. And when I say flooded, I don't mean their yards or their outbuildings, their actual insides of their homes. And I hope that a majority of the city council could understand, if they were in this position, that this isn't the right thing to do right now. Even though those properties are higher than the other homes, where is the water gonna go? It's gonna go on houses already flooded. So I'm just praying that we have enough votes for it to go down for now, and that we try to figure out how we can route water in the future to prevent this.
And isn't it Military Child Thursday?
Oh, yes, it's also
Yes.
Month of the Military Child.
Yes.
So every April, it's recognized by Congress that we celebrate military children and the sacrifice that they make for their parents' service to the military. And I serve as the Tennessee Commissioner to the Military Interstate Children's Compact. So I help kind of facilitate some of the events locally and then encourage others to do that across the state. So we'll actually have the Garrison Command Sergeant Major, 2 school liaison officers from Fort Campbell, and some military children come to receive a proclamation from Mayor Pitts and the council.
And we're supposed to wear purple.
Wear purple. Purple is the color for military children. If you take all of the colors of the branches of the services and you mix them together, you get purple.
Really?
Yeah.
I never understood the color. That is so sweet.
Yeah.
So purple, everybody wear
Purple.
purple.
Yes.
I want to go back just a little bit and talk about just you and growing up, what you enjoy doing, your hobbies, but what was something that that really gave you passion as a teenager, or just what was it that you always loved to do?
Well, my brother and I started working when we were 11 and 12, to get money for things. And so I've always found that working a job around people was probably the best thing for me. I just my stepdad used to say, Joan, that's my mom, Joan and her kids could talk to a telephone pole and get an answer, and that's 900% true.
To a telephone pole and get
an answer. And then I was really involved in activities. We were raised in a Masonic family, and I was a part of the Job's Daughters organization, and that taught me, when I was chaplain, it taught me how to memorize scripture and my role as the chaplain and deliver it with meaning. And I feel like that also helped me get out of my shell. Talking with a group of people is a lot different than being in front of people. And I still get very nervous when the focus is on me. I like being part of a collaborative group. But that actually at 12 and 13 years old really kind of pushed me out to be dedicated to studying and being prepared and being organized.
Yeah. We were talking about earlier about sometimes we have the characteristics sometimes of the things we do like our grandparents.
Mhm.
Like I was telling you about my grandmother getting up at 4, and I thought that was just unheard of, getting up with the chickens. I would always say that. And now I see myself getting up and getting a lot more done. My Joe's that way. He gets up really early, and the quietness of the moment, you get so much done in that moment to do what you need to do. You know, as a city council person, there's so much you have to balance. And there's so much, because you think about how big is your area that you represent.
I think we all represent about 16,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
each ward.
And to think about, that's a lot. And there's a lot of needs. And I think what I love is like you went out to check on the families in the flood areas. But is it a time that you feel like there's not enough hours in the day to get done what you feel like you need to do?
I do, and that's probably only because I have a difficult time telling people no when they ask me to help with something else.
Yeah,
So
hard.
it's my own fault. But I believe that I need to help, and it's a scheduling thing, right?
Yeah.
So if I can fit it in a day, I'm going to try to do it. I get up early also to try to take care of some of those responsibilities before my work day starts, and then I follow up after. But it's about being organized and being scheduled and making sure that you give yourself enough time to prepare for something that you promised that you would do. And it's really weird. I'm kind of a weird person. The busier I am, the more organized I am.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't know why, but yes,
Yeah.
that's me.
So it helps you to kind of put together what you need to do for the day.
Yeah, well, for
Do you make a list? So you have
I go off I put it in my account, my Google Calendar, and then I put notes on what my deliverables are, and then I make a calendar item for those. And
impressive.
my husband, he's an introvert, and I used to keep a manual calendar on the refrigerator for him to know where I was going to be after work, and he never looked at it. I'm like, why am I doing this? So we have an Echo show in our kitchen, so he can just ask Alexa, where's Deanna, and she'll tell him where I am and how long I'll be there.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Alexa, I think now
Yeah.
you can do that.
Hey Alexa, where's Deanna? Well, Deanna's schedule is blah 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 blah.
So because that was already on your calendar.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. So he'll just, if he wonders where I am, so texting me, he'll ask Alexa where I am.
yeah, you mentioned earlier your sweet daughter, Caitlin.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about Caitlin.
She is we all gush about our kids, but I believe she's truly special. One thing is that she was a military child until she was 10 years old, and her dad was gone every other year, which we became very close because we only had each other. Mm-hmm. But she never moved schools. Like a lot of her friends and a lot of other military children moved 6 to 12 times in their K through 12 school career. She went to preschool in Clarksville. She went to Minglewood Elementary. She went to New Providence Middle. She went to Northwest. Go Vikings! I have to do that for our mayor. Go Vikings! And she graduated from Austin Peay. She never had to pick up and leave her friends. And she took advantage of that and has made some lasting friendships with people. She is not as outgoing as I am. She's a good mix between me and her dad. She loves to talk sports and college basketball with her dad, and then she likes to do the other curly stuff with me. And she's pretty career focused right now. She was recently appointed to be a commissioner for the Housing Authority, and there's a lot of work to be done there. But some of the things that she tells me about, she put in her calendar, and she's got a notebook. I'm like, oh yeah, she inherited the organizational skills from her mother's side of the family.
I enjoyed being with Caitlin that time she came over and interviewed us, for Bella's Closet. She was so sweet, a great interviewer, I'm telling you. And just, Miss Caroline just loved her too when she came over. But she wanted to tell the story, and she did a great job doing it. But she came in just with this big smile on her face, and it's like she already knew a lot of our story. I guess just what was written and she found out about, but just the questions she asked, it's like her interest was like she really was compassionate about us. And Miss Caroline thought that was really sweet because I remember when she left, Miss Caroline said, "Man, that's a smart little girl." It was so sweet. When we talk about military families, Joe always says when thanks the husband for the service, he always thanks the wife because y'all are serving too while they're gone. In our community, we're so blessed to have so many military families and that are coming in all the time.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, if a sweet military wife is watching this now or watching it later that doesn't have a mom and a grandmother close by, what would you say encouragement to that wife or that mama that's got the children and she's by herself?
So we didn't have any family here either.
Okay.
And we didn't have any family at Fort Bragg. So when we got here, we made a family out of our military friends. So my husband, the group of guys he worked with and ladies, we became friends with their spouses and their children, and we all took care of each other especially during deployments. Somebody had an emergency childcare problem, somebody would step up. But nobody really understands what military spouses go through more than other military spouses, especially in deployment situations. And you're running kids to soccer and all that. And so I would say give your family readiness group an opportunity. Reach out to your first sergeant's spouse. In a lot of cases, they're now men and women, right? Or your company commander's spouse, and make sure they know who you are and you know who they are, and network within your community, your military community. That's the only way we survived, especially during those deployment years. I, you know, I never thought, and this is really unrealistic, that my husband was ever going to have to go to war, right? And then 9/11 happened. And Mr. Jenchesky actually said, "Deanne, everything's going to be fine. Everything will be fine." So that's what I encourage people to do. Get involved in your church. A lot of church families have other military families. There are so many veterans in this community that want to help take care of the young military families.
Was it hard when you left the first time?
There was a lot of uncertainty. There was not a lot of communication. They were sitting in Kuwait, waiting to cross over. No cell phones, no satellite phones, no computers. They were just convoying through the desert. So any little bit of information we could get, we clung to. The worst thing was watching the news.
Yes.
That was the worst thing. I had to shut it off.
Because several stories of just friends that, come acquainted with a military wife, it's the unknown, like they can't tell you where they're going.
Mhm.
And then you just have to wait till you hear from someone from the chain down. And I'm thinking about the trauma that your loved one had to go into, or to go in not knowing, and then the same thing you had to deal with back here.
Right.
There's so much unknown, but then you have to carry the household on, take care of the babies, keep them not to be fearful, or I think about all the things that you literally had to balance all at one time.
And I was working a full-time job. So in retail. Oh.
Where are you working at retail?
I worked at Parks Belk for 18 years.
Did you really?
I did.
Yeah.
When the Belk family still owned it. Yeah. But we figured it all out. My goal was to try to keep everything handled so he could focus on his job and not have to worry about what was going on at home. They needed to keep clear minds and focus on keeping safe and keeping each other safe. And so I had my mom that I could call and talk about things with, but I tried not to burden him with anything. He came home from a deployment. He goes, "Did you get a new roof?" I'm like, "Yes, I did." He goes, "Well, why didn't you tell me? What were you going to do about it? You're in the middle of nowhere in Iraq."
Yeah, what
insurance covered it.
That's the first thing. Let me just hear that. I'll be okay with it.
Yeah. So the second deployment, when something had to be fixed, he he was fine, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna ask this question, as a community, what would you say to us that don't understand the deployment, don't understand the details? What, as a community, how can we best support?
I think this community understands the military and truly loves the military, active duty and veterans in this community. I don't know anybody that doesn't understand um, what happens when somebody deploys and your family is left here. There are so many opportunities and programs and services for our military families in this community, and we never experienced that anywhere else.
I think, there's groups here in the community that understand it and they know, but I still think we have a group that don't know what to do or what to say, to, if, say for instance, if a family's coming into the church and a mom's holding the kids and they're going to help, sometimes the words, I feel like a lot of people in their heart say, thank you for your service.
Right.
But they might not be able to be the group you're talking about that's hands-on active, but it's just the sweet little family that's sitting in the church pew, or they are sitting in a restaurant and see a precious family. I asked that question one time to a military wife, and her response back was this. She said, you might not know my situation. You might not know the struggles behind the doors when the doors close with my children needing dad. I just ask that you just pray for me
Right,
to have
yeah.
strength to be able to be mom and dad during the time. And when crisis happen of Johnny losing something that's not a crisis at all, but to my child it is, just pray that I have strength, because she says a lot of times for her, she would go inward and just say, I've got all of this to do. And it was hard for her to raise her hand, but in the group you talked about earlier, the other wives was her safe place. But out in the community, she said it was hard to raise my hand. But then there was those that came through the community that was always there, and I had to learn to open it up to say, to trust that they're here for my good.
And it's okay to ask for help. Yeah. Prayer is probably the best thing. Because like you said, we're trying to hold it down and don't want to appear weak
Yeah.
because our spouses are being very strong where they are. So, and if somebody wants to get involved with one of the organizations in Clarksville, you don't have to be a service member or veteran.
So how do they do that?
Well, there's several. If you go to the Montgomery County Veterans Coalition website, there are several organizations there that you can serve. Operation Stand Down. You've got Red, White, and Blue. There's so many different organizations where people can get involved, and you do not have to have a military background to do so.
I think there was a family that, I wish I could remember their names. They were foster grandparents, not where they brought children in, but for military families. They came in and they were that grandparent, if the grandparents were away.
Oh,
And I don't
nice.
remember the name of the couple, but I thought it was just amazing that they volunteered just to be that surrogate grandparents for that wife that needed help with the children. And it's those stories you don't hear.
That's amazing.
But they don't talk about what they did, but they came in to be a help. And I think it was through a church that happened.
Okay.
And I just heard it through another lady, but they didn't do it like your brother, your sister-in-law. I'm doing this. They quietly just would just step in and just fill that void.
For us, that was the Jencheskis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So before we close, is there anything, if someone wanted to know something about you they don't know about you, what would you tell them?
That I used to be shy.
What?
Exactly. It's true.
No way.
You could ask my husband. So when we got married, he was stationed in North Carolina. I'd never left Washington State.
Well, first of all, I didn't mean to say it like that.
No, but
That personality is just
right.
not shy.
Yes, not anymore. But I picked up and I moved cross country, didn't know anybody, was looking for a job. He was on the Army parachute team, so he was never home. And I just was boohooing. And I called my mom and I said, I just don't know if I can do it. Well, she said, you made a commitment. Okay. So if you're going to survive, you've got to change your thinking and you need to get out there and meet people. And over time, I came out of my shell and, I wasn't shy when I was growing up. It was being put in that new setting of leaving everything I knew behind and
Yes.
moving to North Carolina. But yes, I was shy, and people, Dave will tell people that, and they're like, no. He goes, absolutely. She was shy.
Yeah, and also I call you the cupcake lady.
Yeah. I brought cakes the other day because I
Did
didn't have
you?
time to bake, but
Yeah, I
yes.
think it's sweet how you bring cupcakes to the council when it's their birthday.
Yeah, it's something, it makes people feel special. I think I get more out of it than they do. It's fun for me to
Yeah.
make people feel happy.
Yeah, you
So-
do, because I think about, I don't care how old we are, when someone takes time to do something special for your birthday, it just, you become that child. It's like, oh, that was so nice of you to do that. And then I notice now when you do it, they'll take the cupcakes and everybody's going around sharing it, which I think is sweet. It kind of, food always brings people together.
That's the American way.
Yeah.
Food.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for just getting up and being here this morning and sharing about your mom and your grandmother. And just thank you for being you.
Thank you.
And just continue doing what you do each and every day, putting people, taking care of people and just loving on people. And your compassion when you talk about people and their needs, it's in your heart and you can see it. So thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Walk Club Ministry prayer time this morning. And thank you for waking up and watching this podcast. And I pray that you'll have a blessed day, and looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday, Worship Wednesday, and know that you've been prayed for today. Joanna, I've prayed for you as a community today, and just know that you are loved by God. God bless you.
Stephanie, push the button.